So today I'm joined by Marcus. So Marcus, introduce yourself to the audience.
What's going on, everyone? Good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone that you're in. My name is Marcus Vilmé. I am a mentality shifting coach and founder of AMP Mentalities, which is a business that I created. It's a wellness mindset-based business where I help individuals shift their mentality away from a survival mindset so that they feel confident to fight every day toward a peaceful and enlightened future.
Okay, that was a mouthful. So Marcus, we crossed paths quite some time ago. I honestly don't remember what year it was. Do you remember what year it was?
I think it was around 2018
So it was
into
a while ago.
2019. Yeah, that was when I was starting my business.
Yes, we crossed
So,
paths a very long time ago, and you were my trainer. So yeah,
you know,
I mean, that was a great way to connect. We've definitely stayed connected in the time since then. I would say we both have been on our own kind of entrepreneurship journeys, kind of existing in parallel for quite some time.
definitely.
Absolutely rooting for you from over here, and I think it's the same on the other side.
Oh, absolutely.
But it sounds to me like a lot has changed. A lot of shifting and growing since when you were first starting out in the 2018 timeframe. I remember training with you. I remember you being a very interesting trainer. I don't like working out. I don't like working with trainers. I don't know if you're at liberty. I don't know if there's like a trainee confidence that you have to keep, but I know that I am a difficult client to be trained. I spent a lot of time trying to negotiate myself out of the exercises that you would give me.
Absolutely.
But one thing that I do remember is you used to like take my mind off the fact that we were working out. So I remember being on the elliptical and like being conversation based. We'd be talking about things that were not working out. And before I knew it, my time on the elliptical was over. So I don't know if that's a part of kind of your training process from that standpoint, but I'm very interested to hear kind of what has been going on with you since the time that we were working together way back when.
I love that example. That is a great example to use too. I can definitely say kind of the way things have been from 2018 to now has definitely shifted. That mentality and how I was coaching you, it really has transcended into how I coach now, but it's more on a level of a lot of intentionality behind it all. I am also a life coach, so that kind of also played into it too, where the goal was like, as much as it's great to do the workout and physically become fit and whatever that may be, I always knew that there's a parallel between life and physicality. So if I'm able to take your mind off of what the physical presence is, and we get into life, kind of root out whatever's going on, and in a sense, me act as a therapist, even though I'm not a licensed therapist, at least that provides some relief, it provides a safe space, but it also provides a sense of vulnerability where we're actually able to get into a little bit of the deeper things that may be happening. So kind of since that time of 2018, starting the business up until now, yes, there's been so many different shifts. I no longer live in Boston.
Okay.
I live out in the DMV area, specifically Maryland, as of July, the first week of July. It's been a transition. It's really been a big transition. I'd say the biggest thing is kind of, as much as I reinforce with all the people I've trained of, focusing on yourself, really trying to figure out how you can better yourself through fitness and wellness coaching and so forth, I had to take it upon myself to do that same exact thing. So in a sense, it was a leap of faith to move to the DMV, but it was also something I was brewing to just get out of Boston as well.
All right. Well, I love that for you.
Thank you.
So you know that the Multifaceted brand is something that is near and dear to my heart. So talk to me about what being multifaceted means to you. You've already dropped a couple of hints about some of the things, some of the hats that you wear. So talk to me a little bit more about, if you take a step back and think about like, what does being multifaceted mean to Marcus? Talk me through that.
Yeah. To be multifaceted to me, I love when I'm asked these type of questions because I always like to break things down as just a word itself. So just multi, again, like you were reiterating, like I do wear quite a bit of different hats, sometimes called a jack of all trades. With running a business, as you already know, you have to wear multiple hats. There's no
Absolutely.
way you can wear just one hat. So at times, I'm that fitness coach. At times, I am a nutritional guidance coach. At times, I'm a life coach. At times, I'm the event planner. I am then the PR person. Like, I'm doing all these different things. So multi is definitely one of those things I'm very well versed in. Faceted goes more into just the realm of the uniqueness behind it. So for me, I think what allows me to be a little bit more organic in my approach to the way I see life and the way I do business and kind of how I navigate spaces is I follow a calculated flow. Like a lot of people say, they just go with the flow and what life gives them. For me, I really, really go against it and I rebut it because just going with the flow doesn't allow you to have any autonomy to choose anything. To me, that really doesn't allow you to have that type of growth. Because if you're constantly saying like, oh, I'm just riding this wave, how do you know if this wave is correct? How do you know if it's something that you can really trust if you don't put your own personality into it, you don't put your own thoughts into it, or even have some external dialogue in order to influence where your direction is? So in that faceted component, for me, I just knew that I'm just a different individual. I'm unique. I kind of intertwine a lot of things within myself. So I intertwine some anime pieces like the hero journey into my training methodology and training system. I include my background of being Haitian and kind of that love and also that grit going all the way back to like the Haitian Revolution. Just being able to have a very big track and field background / a sports background, I try to play that into how I coach people. Just like you have to work towards where you're getting to. It's not just an immediate thing. It's not instant gratification. It is constant work and reevaluation to see where you are now, where I call it a benchmark, and where can you go, which is kind of the shift, or what my motto is, let's shift your mentality. So It's a whole group of things that kind of goes into being multifaceted in my point of view.
I love that. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the anime kind of elements in your life and kind of your background and how it leads into some of the things that you've been building. Talk to me a little bit about how that anime representation and the characters who fought for survival, how that kind of leads into who you are today.
Oof. That question has never been asked of me, so I commend you. I love it. Honestly, with the anime piece, that goes back to when I was a kid of just watching quite a bit of cartoons, like going from Cartoon Network to like a PBS Kids to say a Nickelodeon. There was always these different types of cartoons until I got introduced to anime. I don't know if I want to say accidentally, just because I was just sleeping late. But Toonami was that thing where it was just showing a whole bunch of anime. Crazy enough, I didn't know until like maybe sometime in high school or middle school that my mother actually watched a lot of anime when she was
really?
young. Yeah, I was like, you're lying to me. This can't be the case. But her favorite anime was actually He-Man. And when she told me that, I watched it and I was like, okay, this makes perfect sense of why I like the Power Rangers and so forth. So kind of having that background, and a lot of the anime that I watched when I was younger really dealt with the hero's journey. So like a Dragon Ball Z type of situation, or a Mobile G Gundam type of situation. There was always some reason where the hero is facing some form of adversity, and the only way that they can to get past it or overcome it, they had to shift, they had to change, they had to adjust, they had to get stronger in some way, shape, or form. So for me, it actually took a longer period of time to recognize that my life was very similar. And I was going off of that premise of the hero's journey, of knowing like I've been going through quite a bit of adversities, and there were so many moments where as much as I would want to doubt that I can continue pushing forward or feel too exhausted or so forth, I was like, there's stuff to do. There's some way, shape, or form I can mold whatever I need to mold myself into in order to progress to where I want to get to. And not allowing myself to stop has been always the push. And I'm like, in a sense, I'm an anime character. I'm an anime character in that type of genre. So it's been a blessing, because I would say more of recent, since I've been to therapy since last year all the way until now. My therapist has always reiterated, like, Marcus, get back to your essence, get back to who your inner child was, like what you love to do. And so since I've been watching anime more and more and more, getting back into it, knowing that I'm a black nerd, which is a blurred, and really, really taking hold of what that word is and feeling so empowered by it, and even joining so many communities, going to conventions too, and seeing other people like myself, it now has kind of reignited my passion, not only for my business, but how I can navigate certain spaces for myself, but also help others navigate those spaces too, because the survival mindset deals with kind of what the anime trope is of a hero's journey. You're trying to survive. And unless you can get towards like that peaceful, enlightened future that I talk about, you have to adjust, you have to shift, you have to figure some way that you can get to what that is and do it for yourself rather than for another person.
I love that relatability. I think, to your point, the whole idea of the hero's journey, we all face adversity. Some adversity is bigger than others. Mm-hmm. But I think that the idea of seeing this lighthearted representation of somebody going through adversity and figuring out what the best path forward was and kind of working through it and being able to look at that in that entertainment value, but also kind of take from it that inspiration to keep going. I really enjoy that connection back to that that comforting kind of memories of your childhood and the anime that you used to watch. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So you talk a little bit about, you mentioned in passing, therapist.
I love it.
Like,
I love
you tried to squeak by there,
no.
but not so fast. I would love to hear about, as much as you're comfortable talking about, what it's like being a Black man in therapy. I know a lot of Black men, and I mean, I have these conversations, and I think that the perception and the thoughts around it definitely runs the gamut. So there is a wide variety of responses. Some people are open to the idea, not necessarily for them. They're not necessarily sold on it, but open to the potential idea of it. Mm-hmm. Some are more than willing to give it a try. Others are absolutely not for me. There's nothing wrong with me. So I would love to hear your perspective on what it's like being a Black man seeking out therapy. Maybe some of the reasons why you decided to, but just I'm very interested to hear more about what it's like being a Black man in therapy.
I will say going into therapy was not something that was at the top of the list.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because I didn't feel like I would need therapy. I thought I was chill, I was good. Again, going back into the trope of the hero's journey, I was dealing with it. I was surviving, I was doing my thing. There just came a moment in a previous relationship that I was in where I recognized that there was a pattern that continued to happen where I would give my all to my partner and then I would feel empty because I was giving so much. And at that particular time, that was about a year ago. At that particular time, I recognized that as much as I've been giving in the relationship, it's so draining because I didn't know how to fill my own cup. And because of that, I was like, I can't keep doing this. I've done this in previous relationships too, and never locked in on why it was happening in the first place. And so as kind of it was getting closer to the end of the relationship, I was like, I need to find a way to put the focus back on me. I need to figure out how to fill my own cup. So coincidentally, at that same exact time that I was actually seeking therapy, legit, I went on, I think it was like therapist, it was psychology.com. And I just searched for a whole bunch of Black therapists. And I wanted a Black therapist because number one, I wanted to have that association. I wanted to have that connection immediately. Number two, I actually sought out a woman therapist rather than a male therapist. And the reason I wanted the woman therapist over the male therapist is because with the male therapist, for me in particular, I felt like I didn't need answers on masculinity. I didn't need answers on how a man is supposed to be in a relationship, mainly because I noticed that as I've in these relationships that I've been in, it was always a constant thing of, Marcus, you're amazing, you're great, you do so much X, Y, and Z, you're doing the upteenth. I'm like, okay, so then I know what it feels like to have that masculine component, and I'm able to thrive. But I'm like, I need to have that nurturing touch from a woman, especially a Black woman too. So I sought out a Black therapist, and kind of during that journey of therapy, it was one where it was the first time I was kind of rediscovering who I was. And she put the focus back on me, which was beautiful because I already felt like I knew very well of who I was, but there are certain things that I was detached from as I was in that relationship. So coincidentally, at that same exact time that I was going to therapy, I was actually preparing for the most transformative certification that I've ever gone through, which was, it was called the Raw Functional Training Level 2 certification. And the basis behind Raw Functional Training, very brief, is it's a 9-exercise modality that kind of challenges the body's neurological system, as well as the mental resilience side of things. So I'm already level 1 certified. This level 2 is the next level. And the creator of it, which is and he's known by pretty much almost everyone in the fitness community. But he had actually called me after I finished another certification, which was out of nowhere. So I was going for an animal flow certification. And at that particular time, I was working for Google. I was an Exos performance coach, and Exos is also top in the industry. So I was doing the certification. It was 2 days. I was finishing it up on a Sunday. And I had posted on Instagram, like, this trainer made me switch out my shirt for a second time because I was so sweaty. From there, Dovrok had reached out to me and he said, hey, bro, what's going on? I'm like, I'm great. What's good? And so kind of the short of the conversation was like, hey, I'm going to call you in 5 minutes. We got to talk. I got an opportunity for you. And I said, okay, fine. So be it. And what that opportunity was, is he was honestly reaching out to the different individuals he's been following and that are also level 1 coaches to become level 2 coaches and build out the Raw Functional Training community by being able to become a master trainer and train people to be level 1. But he also said, I'm looking for the tip of the spear people. I'm looking for those people I know I can trust, who can continue to push the brand, who continue to push the envelope in their own ways based off of how their own methodologies are and kind of their mannerisms and so forth. So I was like, by all means, I was already going to go for my level 2. And I told him after I get Animal Flow certified, and this was back in 2018 when I got my level 1, I said, after I get my Animal Flow, I want to go for the level 2. So just things were working. I don't think about coincidences. It was just right in alignment. So I then embarked on like 3 months worth of training for the certification. This was back in September. It was the weekend of the 9th and the 10th, or the 10th and the 11th. And then I had the certification in November. So I had roughly 2.5, 3 months to actually train. The reason I bring this up is because with therapy, I was in therapy at that same exact time. And leading up into the certification, my therapist was just reminding me, like, what is the purpose of you doing something to this degree? Because number 1, you have no clue what it really is about. Number 2, it's pretty big. Number 3, they're also weeding out some of the things that you're not supposed to, that you really don't want existing in your life. And so for me, that certification actually was an evolution of who I am. The level 2 certification was a 3-day certification. And basically, I was going through different bouts that first responders do. So I went through kind of some Navy SEAL / Marine type of training, some firefighter type of training, some police type of training. And throughout those 3 days, there was a big emphasis on recovery, but also being able to focus on exactly what the task was at hand. So as I was going through that, what was crazy is it was a 3-day certification. I was able to get through it, and thankfully I got certified after doing a 2-mile crawl on the last day on a Monday, starting at 7 a.m., which everyone thinks I'm crazy for still to this day, but I'll tell that story eventually. But what was beautiful about it is after I came back to Boston, and kind of continued going on with life, I recognized that I can't do the same things I was doing prior to that certification. The other thing that I also recognized within that is through that certification, I actually healed myself immensely. That person that went through, or that boy that went through that bout and got through the other side, I actually felt like that was the father figure I always wanted when I was a kid. So I recognized that I legit transformed from a boy to a man, and that my inner child was actually looking up to the person I am today. And it's like, no, anytime I need help, I know exactly where to go to. I know exactly what my inner child would need. I know how to take care of him. I know how to lead him. I know how to guide him. And so with therapy, I would not have been able to go through that process of evolution of seeing like what a male figure is already, or even going through something to this degree with 7 other men who are going through their own journeys. But to get on the other side and know that, yes, as a black man, there's so many adversities going against us. There are so many tropes that are put against us. I even had the feeling when I was in the previous relationship, I said, I'm tired of feeling like Superman. I am tired of saving the day. I'm tired of feeling exhausted. I really just want to be Clark Kent. Like, I just want to chill. I just want to relax because all I'm doing is serving to the upteenth and nothing is being returned back to me. And that's why I feel so exhausted. And so after not only I admitted that to myself, I also admitted, it was back in 2019, even though it was going backwards, but admitted that I suffer from depression and my coping mechanism is to be hypervigilant. I was like, all of these things can't happen in order for you to progress forward. It can't be a constant thing. So therapy to me unlocked a version of myself that was existent, but there was no attention towards it. And once that was then brought to light, I'm just now the chillest person ever. But if I need to have that grit, if I need to have that sternness, if I need to still have that compassion and whatever, it's easy for me to shift gears and be able to transition into what that looks like, because I feel way more whole. I feel way more comfortable with how I navigate life than prior, because I felt like I was surviving. And now, because I know what surviving feels like, and I'm getting out of it, and I know what it feels like to be out of it, I'm at a sense of ease. Like, things are moving at paces that I can create, and I have the ability to make these certain connections and do whatever as I please, with the comfort knowing that I have this bigger person. I have this evolved person now, and it's good. It's invigorating. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think that it's commendable, that level of vulnerability, but also that self-awareness, that ability to take a step back and look at the situation, whatever the specifics of the situation were, but to really kind of take stock in the fact that, like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't right. There's something off about this. I need to do some work, whatever that work looked like. But that, I think that moment of self-awareness, that aha moment of, I can't continue this way. I need to figure out what the issue is and how to address it, kind of name it, address it, as to not continue to bring that into other parts of your life. So I really do commend you for that, that self-awareness and that vulnerability. Because like I said, it's definitely a topic of conversation in the Black community, around that seeking of help. But I also love the fact that you talked a little bit about the rigor of the training that you went through and how it was almost like a self-coaching scenario. So the vulnerability of the therapy kind of opened you up, but going through it, you're learning how to be a coach for others, but it's almost an opportunity to coach yourself through that transformation.
yeah.
And I know for me, very similarly, so I went through life coach certification, I think in the 2020 timeframe, definitely during COVID. So everything was shut down and it was like, all right, what are we going to do? So I decided to go and do the certification, but it really is an amazing opportunity to take that self-awareness and kind of kick it up a notch, because the things that you're learning, the kind of principles and the methodologies that you're learning to be of service to others, you can't help but to look at yourself in the mirror and kind of do that self-work. And I think that that's been really impactful for me, because I've been in therapy for years, but that coaching aspect, that more active coaching aspect and learning, again, the tools and the methodologies and the frameworks, that come with coaching, I have really benefited more than anybody else. Like people around me get this coaching almost secondhand, but being able to kind of self-coach and self-regulate and approach situations differently based on these tools that you're learning to help others, I think that that's truly amazing. So I can definitely understand that perspective. And it sounds like the program that you went through really was very transformative.
Most definitely. I think I really wouldn't be, it's weird too, because I sometimes, as I reflect on where I am now, I feel like it's either a deja vu or kind of like a twilight zone, where I think back to when I was in high school and I had all these different decisions I can make, and I was flourishing, I was chill, I was doing whatever I had to do. And I think back like, am I looking back at the 18-year-old Marcus and how he was, and now he's an adult and trying to figure out what that looks like? It's like, I think so, because as much as a lot of the things that we experience in life may seem different, there are certain correlations between the traumas and triggers that we, experience. It may be a different time, a different place with a different person, but that doesn't mean the root is not the same. And so kind of going into that, I'm also a Reiki practitioner. And I don't practice Reiki on nobody, on nobody at all. And the reason why for that is I intentionally got it so that I would be able to have my own self-healing. I would be able to have my own self-development. But also whenever I walk into new spaces or even familiar spaces, and even interacting with new people or familiar people, that I have the ability to weed out / vet out who the person is just based off of kind of how they give me certain tones, intonations, body language. I'm able to kind of look at them in that type of view. And as much as that leads into kind of how I'm hypervigilant, that can be seen as a negative thing, but I see it as a positive, because for me, it's a defense mechanism in a sense. It's a way that I can process and make it easier for me to process things for future things and down the line, and also how to adjust certain things. So to your point about like the life coaching and the self-coaching, it's really a different story when you're doing it on yourself and you're also able to call yourself out on your own BS, because you're like, I learned this. There's no way in heck I can allow myself to be subjected to this again,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It really is. It's enlightening. It really is enlightening. And I think very similar to you, it's not, the life coaching isn't the end all be all. So I do offer it, but it's very rare that I say, hey, let me coach you on your life. The same way I talk about the idea of being multifaceted and that interconnection and that synergy and the fact that nothing exists in a silo, everything's connected. The same way as a trainer, you were not like, hey, drop off your physical, take the rest of it, and I'll see you later, but I'm going to train the physical. No, it's all wrapped up in the same being. So I think very similarly for me, when I'm doing, whether it's career coaching or small business coaching, the life coaching is just a supplement, because your career is a part of your life. The business that you started, that you decided you were going to venture off into, is a part of your life. So how are those other puzzle pieces fitting together? How is your mindset and how you view yourself and your accomplishments and your effort? How are those things affecting the things that you're putting out or looking for? And I think that interconnection is important. And I think that the life coaching is really, it's powering up the other things that you're doing. So for me, I lead from a strategy perspective. I look at anything and I kind of piece it together based on what is the strategic approach to it. So that life coaching aspect is really just helping to make it more real, make it more tangible, make sure that it actually is an effective approach, something that we can look at in a holistic way. So I definitely understand that idea of that, like layering it on top. And I think the Reiki aspect of it is even more powerful because it really is just an energy reading. It's not about, like you said, it's not necessarily, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for myself so that I can better understand how to connect to you. So I really do like that idea of that, that kind of multifaceted approach to kind of how you're offering your services. 100%. That's amazing. So when you talk about, so we talked a little bit about representation. You talked about kind of how you've turned into almost the
Mhm.
male role model that you wish you had. Does that kind of affect how you show up in the world? Are you doing anything to be a role model for others so that they have somebody to look up to? Talk to me about what that representation kind of journey looks like for
I
you.
feel like I'm doing that without even trying. And the reason I say it
Okay.
like that is because of therapy, because of putting that focus back on myself, that allowed a lot of the creative side of me to blossom. And I've been having way more fun on Instagram and TikTok and so forth with incorporating a lot of the anime that I watch into those different reels and so forth. And what's really been fulfilling, to be honest, is to see people who actually relate and say like, yo, I didn't know you can do something like this, or I know exactly what you're talking about, or I watched that anime and I know what you mean, or um, even like in the fitness industry, because I was just going to talk a little bit about the fitness industry because based off of my experience with Google/Exos, it really changed my viewpoint even further of what the fitness industry is. There are fitness influencers who you're able to see what they do. They're able to capture your attention based off of the different things that they do. And there are also people like myself, which I guide a lot of my principles, my methodology, my training system, backed by certain things that I experienced, science-based, and also kind of around my peers who are all in that same exact realm of like, we're taking this seriously. We're taking how you move in life seriously. And we're not trying to think about it as you're going to, for example, you're going to do a pull-up with a whole bench press bench. Like, I don't know for what reason you need to do anything like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm very much a practical person when I coach, same as the other coaches that I live with. So when it comes to representation, it's big for me to stay whole and authentic with myself because I recognize that my authenticity is getting noticed. My creativity is getting noticed. For what I'm putting out into the world is getting noticed more than if I even were trying to be a facade in any way, shape, or form. Like I don't subscribe to the whole imposter syndrome type of thing. I may have some moments of imposter syndrome, but the more I'm leaning into who my inner child is and seeing like, what is this boy all about? The better I've been able to attract people who are like, no, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to see exactly what you do. So even with a fitness program that I'm doing right now that I created myself, it's called Metamorphosis, and it goes off of an anime character. And legit, it's going to be a full year of a whole bunch of stuff that I put together. And thus far, people are like, no, it's been very inspiring for me to see what you're doing and putting yourself through. I'm like, none of it is easy. I'm not making this easy for myself in the first place. But the goal has
Absolutely.
been, how can I show up for myself in spaces where I may not be existent physically, but I can be talked about as if it's a whole folktale. That's creating longevity. That's creating a whole story that I can just live on for years and years on end, and even centuries potentially. We'll see what that looks like. But but to be able to represent a black man who's a blurred, which is a black nerd, who loves anime, is incorporating into his business, who talks about it, who loves the holistic side of things, who loves to cook, who kind of likes to take care of himself and have fun. I'm recognizing that more people are like, I want to get to what that looks like. I'm like, it's not that it's difficult. It's you haven't had that shift in mentality to get there. And I'm glad that I'm able to stand my ground and kind
Absolutely.
of be existent in who I am and in those spaces for people to see like, it's very doable. It's very possible. It just takes one shift,
Absolutely.
one thought, and you're able to get there. And it doesn't feel like it's a burden at all. It did feel like it was a burden when I had that type of Superman mentality. But ever since I put my cake down and I've just been like the anime character that I want to be, and I'm able to kind of have those or be in those spaces where the energy is reciprocal, I'm feeling better. And the representation shows for it because more people are, yes, attracted to me, and I still use Reiki to kind of weed them out, but it's more authentic relationships and interaction because people are able to recognize what type of value that I have. And they're like, hey, I appreciate this. I appreciate you to be in these spaces. How can I continue to invite you into those spaces? Because your existence matters to a lot of the people that may not have seen you or heard you, but you hold space for a lot of people. And I'm glad that I'm able to release whatever burden that it could bring for other people that may see it, because I know that I'm showing up for myself in the first place. I have to show up for myself before I show up for anybody else, and be ready for that, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the words that you used was authenticity. And I think that that is the biggest takeaway, because exactly like you said, we are complex beings and there's so many different pieces of us. And it's not uncommon to kind of get into this place where you feel like I have to show up in this way. I am a this, so I have to show up in this way. And it's like, is that authentic to who you are? Like, no, but I feel like I have to show up in this way. So the idea of getting comfortable with embracing that authenticity and the fact that if I show up true to myself, I'll be doing myself a service, but you're also doing a service for those out there who are very similarly living that truth. So not necessarily the packaged, proper vision of yourself that you think you should be, but the real, I'm struggling to get through, I'm doing the best I can version of yourself. If you show up in that way, you are able to connect with the people that are really meant to be reaching out to you, to be seeking your services, and who are going to be inspired by kind of your journey. So I definitely can attest to the fact that authenticity, although it is a little bit of a struggle. You talked about imposter syndrome.
Absolutely
it's not the easiest thing to get past, but when you start to kind of walk in that knowledge and understanding of the fact that being whom I am, like there's only one me, like I have to do myself the service of showing up the way I am so that the people out there who are looking for something like this can find it. If I'm pretending to be something that I'm not, they're not going to find what it is that they need. So I think that looking towards that authenticity and working towards just maintaining that in a world where it may not be the most comfortable thing is very important. So I absolutely applaud that. Just taking all the different things that are who you are and showing up very true to who that is. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. So as you know, we have the affirmation cards, which are very near and dear to my heart. I have a physical deck here, and you have a virtual deck that you are going to pull from. So I'm going to give you a second to grab your virtual card, and then I'm going to ask you to read it and talk to me about what it means to you. So you can go ahead.
Okay. So my card reads, I am a work in progress. I am becoming closer to my true self every day. I allow myself to be who I am in this moment without judgment.
All right. Well, as though we haven't talked about it enough, tell me what that means to you.
It's I think it was for a reason. Like, I'm not big on saying for things to happen. I think me pulling this card specifically, it just really speaks about my journey. I think for one thing, that last sentence is important. I allow myself to be who I am in this moment without judgment. I think there have been moments where I've been very critical of how I show up, very critical on what I'm putting out, what I'm producing. And being an entrepreneur, absolutely, it's going to be a thing that you just get into this perfectionist mindset that if it's not like this, then I'm not going to post. And being able to release that judgment of like, I have flaws, I'm okay. And also me admitting to myself and also having my own model of I strive to completion, not to perfection. It just reinforces the fact that it's okay for me to stumble. It's okay for me to go through these kind of little speed bumps because I'm always a work in progress. If I were perfect, then there's going to be no flaws. There's no way I can grow whatsoever because that's it. That's the limit. And I'm glad that I'm able to go through a whole lot of these processes because I'm only getting better. I'm only becoming even more of the better person I am every single moment that I can be. So speaking on my journey and how things have been, it links up. It links up, and I'm only going further towards that. So
Absolutely. No, definitely, definitely. I think that that's very much spot on. Um, I think that there's like this unspoken kind of camaraderie
yeah.
between people on an entrepreneurial journey. I feel like we're all living the same, we're all living the
Yes.
same struggles, the same lived experiences, wherever you are, whatever niche, whatever industry you're in. There's certain things that these threads that are the same across. And I feel like it's very real, that idea of if it's not
Yeah.
perfect, I'm not putting it out. Like, let's look at progression versus
Yeah.
perfection, because if you're waiting for perfect, you're never going to take a step. And I fight with that very regularly. I think I posted something about the idea of just getting out of your head and doing it. I think that this right here is the perfect example of getting out of your head and doing it. I know for me, I was so
Yeah.
almost obsessed with the idea of perfection and like the aesthetic of what I was putting out. Um, that I was letting that get in the way of just having conversations, just setting up and just doing what needed to be done. So right now I'm actually in my living room. I'm actually in my living room with my
Yeah.
son's laptop. Like, it's a very basic setup, but it's progress. I'm able to have these conversations and I'm not waiting for a full-fledged videographer
Right.
crew, rented space that has the aesthetic that I want. So I think that that is very real. Sometimes you just have to step outside of what is
Absolutely.
perfection and think about
I would have
the
never
value
known
of
you in
that
your living
progress, the
room,
value of
to be
getting it
honest.
done.
Like, I'm
So
like,
absolutely,
excuse me?
absolutely.
You said living room?
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, like, listen,
Look at
this
this.
wallpaper, me and my son put it up a little while back. It's
Entrepreneurial
from
journey like
Target. It's
nobody's
like
business.
contact
That's
paper, but
exactly what
I
it
mean,
is.
you got to do what you got to do. Exactly. Exactly. You talked about wearing different hats. I am set
Yeah,
designer. I
exactly.
am IT. I am production at this point. But you got to do what you got to do. It's really putting the
Right.
progress over this idea of perfection. So I can absolutely second that.
Go.
I'm gonna pull a card. So my affirmation for the day is, even if I cannot see it, I know that all things are working together for my good. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know that there's much else to say. I don't really know. But I will say I've caught myself reading these affirmations and being like, "Oh, this is my favorite one. This is my favorite one." I wrote all of these, so they're all my favorite one. Um, but this is a big one for me,
Mhm.
and it's not just like a right now thing. I remember back to like some darker times in my life. Um, Especially like I think back to like when my husband was really sick and I
Mm.
was going through kind of the uncertainty of what that meant in life. Um, and I would always come back to like all things are working together for your good. There were some times where like the situation seemed dire. It was like things were falling apart. But when I look back and reflect on all of those
Yeah.
things, like had it not been for those things, I wouldn't be where I am now. Um, and while it's not necessarily the most fun route, you appreciate the highs when you've gone
Right.
through some things that are not necessarily those highlights. So for me, I can absolutely appreciate the fact that it may not look like it in the moment, but I know that each of those pieces are going to come together for a
Oh, yeah.
future state that is the
Absolutely.
ideal. It's really what you've been working towards. So for me, it's very real. It might not look like it now, but just hold on, hold out hope, because at some point the pieces are going to fall together and you're going to be
Point.
like, now I understand. That's why none of those things worked ever, because none of them worked. Because if those worked, then I wouldn't be here with this working and coming together at this time. So
That's
that's very real for me. And I feel like this is one of
I
my
do want to say
favorites.
one
They're
thing
all
because
my
I
favorites.
think that was a
It's really
nice
one of
way
my
of putting
favorites.
everything because I like to think of the question people sometimes get asked of, if there were anything that you can change in the past, what would you change? That's kind of going along that same premise. And it's like, if you change something from the past, you would not be who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be the point in the first place? You know?
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that, I mean, people, it's a conversation starter. People will ask that question. And I'm the same way because it's like there's some things that
Right.
in theory, like I'd rather not have had to deal with those things. But it's like the butterfly effect. If that didn't
20.
happen, all of the things that came after it wouldn't have happened and you wouldn't be who you are. So do you really want to change that? Like, is that really what you want to do? No, I don't. So I absolutely agree.
Of course.
Well, thank you for spending some time with me today, Marcus. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Do you have any final words for the listeners
Final
before we
words.
wrap up?
I'd say just kind of tying things into just being multifaceted. I think one big thing that I want to encourage people to shy away from is that life is not one dimensional. You don't have to live in this world where you need external validation for everything. And that's what I've come across quite a bit of time, is that, especially with social media, that external validation is validating a person's existence, where in hindsight, it's not really doing much as you think. So what I usually encourage people to do is utilize the external validation as a way to have a calculated flow, because those people that are saying whatever that may be, I consider those people messengers. They're messengers and mirrors and windows to who they view you as. And as much as it could be good, as much as it could be bad, take those things and use that to see what traits you have, what traits you don't have, what ways are you being viewed, what ways are you not being viewed, and allow yourself to dissect all those things to become the person that you would like to be, and then also how you want to be viewed in a different way, because not everyone is going to see you in the greatest limelight. That's fine. But what's the reason that is happening? Are there triggers? Are there traumas that are popping up with those certain people that are causing these things? There's a certain ways that you act, which are perfectly fine, but it's triggering someone else. That could be a sign that person's not for you. So that goes, as I mentioned, in kind of like what it means to be multifaceted, is like really take that external validation and utilize it for the good of yourself and the benefit of yourself. And that also ties into my own business of like, that allows you to shift your mentality, because you're only going to be able to grow. You're only going to be able to get better. You're only going to be able to impact yourself, which then impacts other people, because it's kind of a whole reciprocal relationship. The more that you love yourself, the more that you put into yourself, the more that you'll get out of life, because there are going to be things that you don't even expect are going to be given to you. So it's one of those type of situations where you have to be able to be open to those type of things, and allow it to guide you. So that's what I want to leave people with.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, thank you again for spending some time with us. Where can they find you? Where
Drop
can
that
they
name.
find
So,
more about your business and more about what you're
even
doing?
though
Talk to
I
us about
don't
that.
live in
Drop that.
Boston, my biggest goal has been, how can I continue to connect back with people in Boston to either hold wellness events, fitness events, or even do some type of thing. So best way to stay in touch and stay in contact with me is I have my website, that is AMP Mentalities Realm, REALM.com, and you'll have all the information that you need in terms of the services that I offer, more about me as the founder. You can even shop my merch. I have merch for women and men. Like, I'm going with a whole bunch of different collections. So you can go on that. There also is a segment where if you want to join my email list, you can join my email list and choose kind of what type of information you want, be it merchandise updates, podcast releases, fitness programs and tips, nutritional guidance, and so forth. You get a whole bunch of things from there. I am on Instagram as Guru Ku. That's GURU_CU. Also on TikTok the same, on Twitter the same. If you want to follow the business, that's A.M.P. Mentalities. That's on Facebook, that's on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest as well. I'm posting more on TikTok Instagram and Facebook the majority, and a lot of the things kind of coincide with each other. But I'm open to chatting. I'm open to helping
Okay.
people shift their mentalities. And because October is right around the corner, I have a couple of things, kind of
Absolutely.
coming up I'm working on. So I can't wait to present those things on those different outlets.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe we'll have to get together and collaborate for some type of wellness event. Bring you back to Boston.
I already have a date in mind in
So
months, so
definitely
we'll
have to
talk
connect
about
and
this
figure out
off
how to make that
cam.
happen.
People, audience, people, I'm sorry,
right.
we can't talk about stuff
All
like
right.
this. You know?
So we will talk about this offline. Offline. More to come. More to come. So definitely stay tuned. But I will put
Thank
all
you
of the
for
information
inviting
on
me.
how to
It was fun.
contact you in the show notes. And thank you again for stopping by.